The Sacramento Kings are a good basketball team, but the gap between good and great in the NBA is massive. The Kings fall to a great team in the Milwaukee Bucks. We'll talk about that game. Plus, I'll tell you why De'Aaron Fox is not sitting out of games despite being a bit banged up. It's all right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season long. Today, presented by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports reporter and producer for ABC 10 News. Just got back to my house after my shift at ABC 10. That's why this podcast is coming out so late. Most of you are probably waiting till the following morning to listen to this, which technically it is the following morning. I'm recording this at 12:09 in the morning. The Kings lost to the Milwaukee Bucks hours ago. That's the blessing and the curse of an Eastern Conference game. And in game one of this 6-game road trip, we knew it was going to be the toughest test for Sacramento, taking on a championship caliber team in the Milwaukee Bucks with a multi-time MVP in Giannis Antetokounmpo. And to me, the Boston Celtics and Milwaukee Bucks are the two best teams in the NBA right now. I think the best teams, believe it or not, are in the Eastern Conference. Maybe you might want to say the Western Conference as a whole is better. There's certainly a lot more teams are closer in the West compared to the East. But in my opinion, the two juggernauts in the league right now are the Bucks and the Celtics in the East. And I think we can learn a lot from how the Sacramento Kings finished their games against the Boston Celtics a few weeks ago and finish this game tonight against the Milwaukee Bucks. Kings lose to the Bucks 126-113. Their 3-game win streak is snapped. And like I said in the introduction, the gap between good and great in the NBA is massive. It may not seem like it, and a lot of teams or maybe a lot of fans expect once a team gets to good status, it's only a matter of time before they get to great. And of course, we're all hoping that the Sacramento Kings can get to great status. But remember, we came into this season hoping that the Sacramento Kings could achieve good. Well, I feel pretty confident in saying that the Kings have done that. I feel very confident saying the Sacramento Kings are a good basketball team. I think their record right now reflects that. I think their record by the trade deadline will reflect that. And I think the fact that they will definitely be in the mix for a playoff spot, not just play-in spot, will reflect that. A lot can happen over the remainder of the season. Things can go wrong. Things can go great for Sacramento. But I feel pretty confident in saying the Kings are a good team. The Milwaukee Bucks are a great team. They won a championship a couple seasons ago. They're expected to be championship contenders again this season or in the mix for a championship. That's what their whole season is for. As much as the regular season matters in terms of playoff seeding, the Milwaukee Bucks right now are what the Kings were in 2002. The regular season was significant, and the Kings were the best team during the regular season at that time. But the regular season didn't matter because it was all about putting yourself in a position to make as deep of a playoff and a championship run as possible. That's the goal for Milwaukee. If they don't win a championship, I'm not saying it's a failed season, but they don't feel accomplished, even if they have the best record in the NBA at the end of the regular season. That doesn't mean anything for a team like Milwaukee. It means a whole hell of a lot for the team like the Sacramento Kings, right? Becoming a great team takes a lot of time and takes a lot of hard lessons. We see a lot of teams. Look at the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics, I thought were a great team last year. This season, they're trying to go from great to championship status, and it took them losing in the NBA Finals last year, getting all the way there and failing in order to get off to this fantastic start that they're off to. Now, we'll have to wait and see if they're able to sustain that, and more importantly, if they're able to win and get back to the Eastern Conference Finals and back to the NBA Finals come May and June. That's all to be determined. But it takes hard lessons and it takes a lot of time in order for a team to become great, to go from good to great. To me, there's nothing really to be upset about this Kings loss. There's nothing, because the way that they lost this game, it's very similar in principle to the way that they lost the game against the Boston Celtics. The Celtics game went worse, right? The Celtics game, the Kings were in the mix of it, got off to not the best of starts. Second and third quarters came back, were in the mix. And then fourth quarter, like it was like end of third quarter and all the fourth quarter, the Celtics went on a massive 30-something to something run. It was like 34-2 or 34-4, some crazy kind of run the Celtics went on, and they buried the Kings in the fourth quarter. Kings didn't have a chance. This game against the Milwaukee Bucks, Sacramento got off to a great start, built a pretty decent lead. Milwaukee hung around. You figured they would. Kings trailed by just 3 going into the fourth quarter, and then they were outscored by 13 in the fourth. No, they were not outscored by 13. Excuse me. They ended up losing by 13, but they were outscored, I think, by 10. Duh, simple math. They were outscored by 10 in the fourth quarter. We're held to just 19 points, I believe, in the fourth quarter. What can we see? What parallels do we see? What can we learn from these two losses? What we can see is that the Sacramento Kings are more than capable of hanging with any team in the league. They're more than capable of hanging and competing with great teams. But to close out a game, especially on the road against those great teams, that's a whole nother tier. A whole nother tier that the Sacramento Kings aren't at yet. Now, that doesn't mean from time to time that they can't steal one here or there or win a game here or there. And they've actually done that a decent amount against teams that I think are better than them on their home floor in Sacramento, which is awesome. You want to see a team, you want to see Sacramento have that kind of success when they're on their home floor. But on the road against the two, again, in my opinion, best teams in the NBA, two seasoned teams who know how to win close games, teams with experience that the Sacramento Kings simply do not have, to see them handle their business and create quick separation, dominant separation from the Sacramento Kings in a matter of a quarter or a matter of sometimes just minutes. It's a progress report. It's a reality check to where the Sacramento Kings are. They're good. They can compete on any given night. They're not great yet. They're not great enough to consistently pull out and win these games. They're not great enough to be able to handle a team pulling away from them, a championship caliber team pulling away from them. And they're not great enough to pull away from a championship caliber team on the road yet. So I've seen this conversation happening on Twitter, and I understand the conversation completely. You don't want the Sacramento Kings, you don't want this team to be okay with competing but losing. You never want them to be okay with that. And I'm pretty confident saying Mike Brown and the Kings are not okay with that. And I know there are a lot of Kings fans that aren't okay with that. That's fine. You should always go out there expecting to win and wanting to win and trying to do your damnedest to win and being frustrated if you don't accomplish that goal. That should be the expectation for the Kings 100%. Absolutely. But growth takes time. So my question is, the Kings need to, my thing is the Kings need to learn from these lessons, right? They absolutely need to learn these lessons. They need to, and hopefully they're fast learners. Hopefully they can figure out after getting their ass kicked in Boston and then getting their butt kicked in the fourth quarter here against the Milwaukee Bucks. Hopefully they can learn what they're doing wrong. They can go back, review the film, see what the Bucks, see what the Celtics do, and learn from those so that maybe this happens, if anything, less frequently against some of the best teams in the NBA for the remainder of the season. But the question for me is it fair to expect the Sacramento Kings to learn these lessons to close the gap between good and great just this season? I don't think that's fair at all. I think it's going to take bare minimum the Sacramento Kings getting into a playoff series, a legit best of 7 series, and losing that series. Let's be honest here. I know the Sacramento Kings have spent some time in the 4th seed in the Western Conference. That would be amazing if the Kings ended up a 4th seed by the end of the season. I think that's about as best case scenario as it could possibly be, but it's not as far-fetched as maybe we thought it was coming into this season. I thought 6 was going to be far-fetched for the Kings. I think Sacramento will have a chance to win a legitimate playoff seed and not even have to worry about the play-in. And boy, what improvement that is season over season, especially for a team on a 16-year playoff drought, right? But to me, if the Sacramento Kings make the playoffs, they are going to more than likely lose in the first round. More than likely. Even if, well, I shouldn't even say even if they're higher seed, because I don't think that that's very likely. I think if the Kings are getting into the playoffs, it's going to be as a lower seed. At best, 5-6. At absolute best. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong. Could be maybe a little more of a pessimistic view. I expect the Sacramento Kings to take on a team in those top 4 seeds in the West. Teams like the Suns, teams like the Nuggets, teams that have been there, done that. And that will come across in the way these games are played. Now, I'm not saying the Sacramento Kings will absolutely get swept. I think it's very possible that the Kings do get swept. But I think the Kings need to learn the lesson by playing in that playoff series. And maybe they surprise me. Maybe they surprise all of us and they get to the playoffs and they learn those lessons while having success. Maybe they win a playoff series. From there, it's about, okay, how do you build from that, right? I don't think any of us expect the Sacramento Kings to get past the second round of the playoffs. If they get past the first round, that might be almost a parade worthy in Sacramento. And it feels foolish to even say such a thing for a team that hasn't made the playoffs in 16 years, right? I believe if the Kings make the playoffs, they will lose in the first round. I don't think they'll get swept. They'll probably lose in 5 or 6 games. I think they win a game or 2 at home. They need to go through that, in my opinion, in order to become a great team. They need to learn lessons from that and incorporate those lessons into next season with hopefully an improved roster. Maybe certain players return. Maybe Monte McNair adds new players. All that context will be added. Like I said, the Kings can hang with anybody in the league, but closing out games, beating those great teams consistently, is it fair to expect them to learn that lesson and figure that out this season? I don't think so. And one of my Twitter followers, Raphael, at Mr. Rufio, says this, and I thought it was very well put. He said, I was thinking they got the games versus bad and bottom tier playoff teams this year, and next year they'll be able to handle the likes of first, second, and third seeds. I think that's a great way of looking at it. The Kings, I think, should be able to close that gap and win. I won't say necessarily a majority of games. A majority against bad teams and non-playoff teams, sure. But a good amount of games against teams that are in that mix for the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seeds, right? I think the Kings have proven that they can hang with those teams and should be able, the goal should be able to, by the end of the season, they're closing out the majority of those games. Then next season, after lessons learned in the playoffs, hopefully, with improvements, next season, that's where we're looking for, okay, we know this team is good and was good for a full season. Now we really have to see them being great against great teams. I think next year is a better way of looking at it. Again, just my opinion. I also really quickly want to give a compliment to Mike Brown. I think it's one of the best compliments that I can give Mike Brown. And it's that he has this Sacramento Kings roster genuinely believing that they're a playoff team in the Western Conference. Now, I've covered plenty of media days over the last 8 seasons, I believe. I've covered all but one media day over the last 8 seasons. In every single one of those media days, players say, yeah, we're going to make the playoffs. This is the team. This is it. We got playoff talent. We're going to do it. Every single year it happens. And most of the time in Sacramento, we end up kind of rolling our eyes at it because, like, yeah. And then you start playing games and reality hits, right? It's one thing to say it. It's another thing to play like you believe it. And Mike Brown and his coaching staff have these Sacramento Kings, this Kings team, playing like they believe that the 4th and 5th seed in the Western Conference, where they've been around and hovering, that's where they belong. That's where they're supposed to be. They don't care about the history. They say this is the first year for this squad, and this squad is a 4th or 5th seed in the West. That's how they're playing. They believe that. Credit to Mike Brown for that. And Mike Brown also has individual players playing with more confidence in themselves and their games than they've ever played at any point in their career. Malik Monk is the first name to come to mind. I think Chimezie Metu, you could also put in that conversation. Trey Lyles to some extent in that conversation. There are a lot of players here in Sacramento that are playing the best basketball they've ever played and believe that they're capable of playing that basketball and maybe even taking their game to another level I give credit to Mike Brown and his coaching staff for that. De'Aaron Fox, another struggle of a game for him offensively, and people are freaking out about it. People are freaking out about it. I'm going to address De'Aaron Fox playing through discomfort, clear discomfort. Something is off with De'Aaron Fox. We've talked about that before over the last few games here on Locked On Kings. Something is going on with De'Aaron Fox, but there's a reason why he's playing through it. And there's a reason why he can't, in my opinion, or shouldn't take games off to get that rest. I'll explain in just a second after I tell you more about Prize Picks, the title sponsor here of the Locked On Kings podcast. Prize Picks is daily fantasy the way it was meant to be played. The way Prize Picks works, you pick 2 to 6 players, and if they will score more or less than the Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any one of your entries. It's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections. So you don't have to worry about the sharks out there going to take your money. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. That includes, of course, the NBA, the NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing. I could keep going on, and entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. There are safe and fast withdrawals. So when you win your money, you get your money quickly. Don't have to worry anything about that. And it currently is operational in over 30 states and Canada. Prize Picks, great deal for you right now by being a Locked On Kings listener. If you download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com and sign up today, first-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On, all one word. You deposit $100, you get $100 back. You deposit $50, you get $50 back right there. No questions asked, and it happens instantly. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up to take advantage of that instant deposit match and play Prize Picks daily fantasy the way it was meant to be played. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of this De'Aaron Fox conversation, congratulations are in order. De'Aaron passed Mitch Richmond, the Rock, for second all-time in the sack era of Kings assist leaders. He's behind just Mike Bibby, the number 2,129. That's what it took to pass Mitch Richmond. So congratulations to De'Aaron Fox for making it number 2 on that list. I think it's only a matter of time before he passes Mike Bibby and gets number 1. And it just goes to show that De'Aaron does more than just score the basketball. But right now, De'Aaron is struggling to score the basketball. Even though he's still in double digits consistently, nightly, his shooting percentages are down, and he's not putting up those dominant high 20s, 30s, flirting with 40-point nights that he was providing for the Sacramento Kings at the beginning of the season. De'Aaron tonight, 15 points, 5 of 16 shooting. Yikes. Has had a few games like that recently. 2 rebounds, 2 assists in 32 minutes. Numbers that we expect those numbers to be better for De'Aaron Fox. And absolutely, there is something going on with De'Aaron. He's admitted it as much. He's playing a little banged up. He's playing with illness. That's been a conversation on Twitter for a long time. I understand De'Aaron is not 100%. But I love you, Twitter Kings followers. I enjoy interacting with you. Sometimes, though, you need to pump the brakes on things that you don't understand. And this is coming from someone who also does not understand the situation. The reality is none of us outside of De'Aaron Fox, his inner circle, the Sacramento Kings, and the Kings training staff know what's actually going on health-wise with De'Aaron Fox. So Twitter doctors, put your diplomas away. Put your PhD, your fake PhDs that you drew in crayon, put those away. You don't know what's going on. So to say that De'Aaron Fox needs to take games off, I understand if your intentions are good, like De'Aaron, get some rest and then come back and be back to your normal stuff. I understand if your intentions are good. I don't think you have bad intentions by any means, but pump the brakes a little bit because we have no idea what's really going on with De'Aaron. And if you're choosing not to trust De'Aaron, if you're choosing not to trust the Kings training staff, if De'Aaron wasn't good to go and the Kings training staff didn't believe that De'Aaron was good to go, he wouldn't be playing. He wouldn't have played these last handful of weeks. Clearly, they feel and he feels that he's good enough to still go out there and contribute. And De'Aaron has contributed. De'Aaron is contributing, even if his scoring numbers are down, even if he's not scoring at the rate or playing like the star he was for the Kings at the start of the season. he's stepping up in other ways. He's putting up numbers in other ways. Like I said, he's still giving you 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 points nightly. It's not in those 20s like we expect, but he's still right in that teens area right now. So he's still contributing there. Plus, like we've talked about a lot recently on Locked On Kings, defensively, I think De'Aaron Fox has been playing really well despite being in this shooting and scoring slump a little bit. And the best part about everything, the Sacramento Kings are still majority winning their games with De'Aaron struggling. That's what people should be talking about, not De'Aaron playing through whatever ailments that he has. Yes, he is not the same. Clearly, something's a little bit slow. His shot is a little bit flat. He doesn't have as much legs under his shot. His shot is short. He's not as aggressive as he was to start the season. Clearly, there are things going on. You don't have to be a doctor to see that. Just use your eyeballs, right? But it's damned if you do, damned if you don't with De'Aaron. Some people believe that he should not be playing. First off, if the Sacramento Kings don't play De'Aaron Fox, their chances of winning plummet. Because even if De'Aaron is not scoring at the rate that we expect, he's still a threat to score at the rate we expect on a nightly basis. And that opens up opportunities for teammates. Having the presence of De'Aaron Fox at 80% or 70% or 60% is way better than 0% of De'Aaron Fox and asking 50% more of every single player not named De'Aaron who has to step up in that spot. The Kings' chances of losing or winning plummet if De'Aaron does not play, even if De'Aaron is not at 100%. And if De'Aaron were choosing not to play, if he could go, if he was medically cleared and he held himself out, or the Kings held him out because he was banged up a little bit, or because he was dealing with the lingering illness or whatever it is, he would be ripped to shreds for that. He would be ridiculed for that. That's not a star. That's not a leader. Wow, De'Aaron Fox quitting on his team. Why am I saying this? It's because these were some of the narratives that were around De'Aaron Fox just last season. Remember, when Tyrese Halliburton was playing and the Kings were injured, De'Aaron Fox and the Kings were struggling, De'Aaron Fox decided to sit out for a while. The Tyrese Halliburton trade happens. Domantas Sabonis shows up. Suddenly, De'Aaron Fox is available to play. A lot of people pointed the fingers at De'Aaron Fox, said he had quit on the team and miraculously healed as soon as that trade happened. Now, they drew stupid conclusions that De'Aaron didn't want to play with Tyrese Halliburton, and as soon as he was gone, De'Aaron was happy to play. Whatever. But I'm saying De'Aaron still deals with comments and ridicule about that right now. Right now. You can see he responded to a tweet 2 days ago about that same exact thing. People accusing him of quitting last season when he could have played. So now you want him to rest or not play at this point? Again, most of you have the right intentions. You want De'Aaron to get right so he gets back to his 100% self. I get that. But if De'Aaron were to sit out when all he wants to do is win, that's all De'Aaron cares about. De'Aaron Fox just wants to win. And I see that in his demeanor. I see that in him stepping up in the areas outside of scoring. I see that in him taking the challenges from Mike Brown and implementing them on himself, changing his game to complement his team, not just having his team complement him. De'Aaron Fox is doing a lot of things that the Kings need from him as a leader to win basketball games. And lo and behold, they're winning basketball games. De'Aaron is being a team player. De'Aaron is stepping up in major ways. He's showing that leadership. If De'Aaron were to sit out of games when he could play, when he clearly can play, even if he's not at 100%, that would hurt the Kings' chances of winning, and he would be ridiculed for that. And also, I've read some of those tweets on Twitter, and this is always going to happen, so it's really not worth bringing up beyond this. Most of you aren't this way, I understand, but it's amazing how when De'Aaron was off to that great start to start this season, that there was no mention, no comment whatsoever. And then suddenly, as soon as De'Aaron starts to struggle, boy, they all come flooding back, man. Keep that same energy. It used to be a Marvin Bagley quote. Keep that same energy. De'Aaron Fox just wants to win. And I think we should let the medical experts and let De'Aaron make the decision on if he plays or not. And we don't have to necessarily worry about that. Harrison Barnes had another solid game for Sacramento, 20 points, 6 of 11 shooting from the field, 3 rebounds. This is just the second loss this season that the Sacramento Kings have had when he scores 13 or more points. I think they're 9-2 now in those 11 games. So still positive record when you're getting that kind of input from Harrison Barnes. The Kings actually got 6 players finishing in double figures, which is normally a recipe for success for Sacramento. Unfortunately, tonight, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jrue Holiday, and the rest of that Milwaukee Bucks team was just too tough to handle. And a lot of the reason why the Kings struggled in this game, in my opinion, even with 6 double-digit scorers, the Kings bench was not nearly as good as they normally are. With the exception of Malik Monk, who had 16 points, the Kings bench as a whole had 27. Again, and like I said, Malik contributed 16 of those 27 points. They got 5 points from Chimezie Metu, 4 points from Davion Mitchell, 2 points at the very end of the game from Rashawn Holmes. That was the bench contribution. The Kings bench has been near the top of the league in points scored consistently. And we're seeing when De'Aaron and Sabonis aren't scoring a boatload of points, or Kevin Huerter's not hitting a boatload of threes, and the Kings bench is not scoring a boatload of points, the Kings offense is not what they've been. I did think Keegan Murray had good moments. I think Keegan Murray is getting back to solid form, if I'm going to use a soccer term. Like he's back to playing at a comfortable level, and shots are falling for him. He went 6 of 10 from the field, finished with 15 points, 4 rebounds, a couple blocks in 27 minutes. I thought he was aggressive out of the gate. It's good to see Keegan Murray playing well again, and I hope that continues over the course of this road trip, because the Kings are going to need that over the remainder of this road trip. On my next episode of the Locked On Kings podcast, I'm excited about this. I have one of the hosts from Locked On Lakers and one of the hosts from Locked On Hornets, the Charlotte Hornets, joining me here on Locked On Kings. We're going to talk about Malik Monk's NBA journey from Charlotte and his struggles in Charlotte to his one really good season last season in LA to now playing the best basketball of his career and a front runner, in my opinion, for 6th man of the year in Sacramento. We're going to go through step by step how Malik Monk got to this point with experts from the 2 teams that he's played on before the Sacramento Kings. So I hope you will join me for that. As for now, we are done. Appreciate your support of the podcast. As always, if you want to discuss anything that we discussed, whether it's about De'Aaron Fox, about the gap between good and great for the Sacramento Kings, whatever it is, we can discuss it. You can reach me on Twitter at MattGeorgeSack. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. And I know if you're watching on YouTube, you're probably already in the discussions in the comments down below. Appreciate that support. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, leave a thumbs up if you haven't already. If you are an audio listener, you guys are my absolute favorite. You can leave a review on Spotify, hit 5 stars there, or if you can go over to Apple Podcasts, hit 5 stars, and actually leave your own custom review, what you like about the podcast, why you'd encourage others, Kings fans or NBA fans, period, to listen to the podcast. That helps me out a ton. I really would appreciate that. Now I'm going to bed. I'm tired. And if you're listening to this the next morning, like you probably are, good morning, and I hope you have a very good Thursday. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You have been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.